What's up, everybody? How's it going? Can you guys... Hi, Indu. Can you hear me, Indu? What's up, Travis? As many RSVPs as in the past, but even if we just have one person, I think it'll be worth it. Hey, Roy. Got my part-time pilot mug. Give it a couple minutes. While we're waiting, do you guys have an update on your progress? Um, where are you guys at in the ground school? Um, what? Yeah, give me an update on your guys' progress. Is there anything you're getting stuck on, or um, have you made progress? Stuff like that. And Indu, we're gonna do just some wind flag stuff. So how to determine uh, your traffic pattern based off what the wind sock says or the wind triangle says. There's a couple of figures on the FAA written exam that we'll go over, and these figures are based off what you'll see in real life. So when you overfly an airport, we'll get into it, but you want to check out the wind sock, and then that'll determine which runway you land on and what kind of winds you're going to have. Travis, you're about halfway done. Nicely done. Roy, what about you? What's your update? For everyone that's joining me, we're gonna wait maybe one more minute to get started, but just in the comments, tell me what progress you have in your ground school or your flight training, where you're at, and maybe what you want to get to next week. Ibrahima, am I saying that right? Sorry if I'm not, but Ibrahim, 93% done, just going over the modules again. Awesome. Awesome, man. Roy's reviewing his notes. Very cool. All right, well, feel free to continue to tell me your updates, but I'm going to get started here. So I'm gonna get rid of my face and just show my screen. All right, so here we have an FAA written figure. You'll see this from the FAA figures guide. This is going to be on your FAA written test, and this is something you would see in real life as well. So what we have here is I'm going to explain what we're looking at, and then I'm going to explain how to use it, how to figure out what the traffic patterns are, which runways you want to use, and then I'll test you guys out a little bit. So this is like a pattern diagram or wind diagram, and so the idea with this is that this is what you would see as you fly over an airport. So let's say you're coming to an uncontrolled airport, right? So you're not talking to ATC. So ATC is not telling you, hey, the winds are this, so we want you to land on this runway, inner left traffic, blah, 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 blah. They're not telling you all that stuff, so you got to figure out that stuff on your own. There's no ATC. So every airport should have a windsock or some sort of wind device that turns with the wind and allows you, when you fly over it, to determine which direction the wind is at on the ground by the runway. So in this one here, we have a wind sock. Now a wind sock, it blows in the direction, so it points in the direction opposite the way the wind is coming. So in this diagram, we have the wind coming from this direction. Now, whenever we say the winds, we're saying, oops, sorry about that. Whenever we say the winds, hang on a second. Okay, start over. Whenever we say the winds, we say a direction and the velocity. So we say, okay, 180 at, let's say, 10 knots. Okay, this direction right here is the direction that the wind is coming from. It's not that the direction the wind is going to. So 180, that means the wind is coming from the south. So the wind arrow would look like this. It's coming from the south. So this wind sock, it points in the opposite direction that the wind is coming. So you see a windsock pointing in this direction, you know that the wind is coming from the opposite direction. So in this case, the wind would be coming from the northwest, about 315 or 320, right? So you got to remember that about wind socks. Wind socks point, they turn and point into the direction opposite that the wind is coming from. So when you remember that, you can overfly this airport and you know that the wind is coming from the northwest because the flag is pointing this way. So when you overfly this, we want to land with the most headwind, right? We want the least amount of crosswind, we don't want a tailwind, and we want a headwind. The perfect landing would be straight into a headwind. And most runways are oriented with the local winds. So local winds have patterns, right? There's climates and there's climate patterns, especially when you're around like the ocean, right? You get that breeze coming in. So I'm right outside of San Diego Airport, and almost probably 95% of the time they're landing to the west because the wind is coming from the Pacific Ocean out of the west. So they're flying into the headwind, they're flying towards the ocean. So we want to land into the wind. So I'm going to label these. So this is runway 1, runway 2, runway 3, and runway 4. With the wind as shown in this wind cone, which runway would be best? I want you guys to say this in the comments. Which runway would be best to land on? Would it be best to land on runway 1? Runway 2? Okay, so we got 2 for runway 2. And we got another one for runway 2. Okay, yeah, so the answer is runway 2 or runway 3. It's kind of hard to tell. It looks like this is directly from the northwest. So that means that landing to the north or landing to the west, either of these would be good options. So that's what these L shapes are. These L shapes show you your base leg. So for runway 2, right here, it shows you the base leg of the pattern right here, and then the turn to final right here. So this is the final, the long part is the final, and then you would be landing on a runway right here in the direction west. Okay? So if we were to draw out the whole traffic pattern, right? You would have your downwind, base, final, you'd have a runway here, and then you would take off here and then run like that. So which what is the traffic pattern direction for runway 2? I want you guys to say that in the comments. What's the traffic pattern direction for runway 2? No, Roy. So what's the traffic pattern direction? Like right is it right traffic or is it left traffic? Hindu says right. Roy says right. Right 270. Right hand pattern says Israel. So yes, right hand pattern, and the way we tell again is by you kind of visualize this traffic pattern. It gives you again the base. Let me do blue. It gives you the base leg and the final leg, and that's enough information to draw this whole traffic pattern, and you can see that it's only right turns. All right, so what about runway 3? What traffic pattern is runway 3? So runway 3 down here, what traffic pattern? Roy says left. Hindu says left. And Israel said, okay, so you guys got it. So yeah, so left traffic, because why? Because this is the base leg. This is the turn to final. That would be a left turn. We'd have our runway right here. And that means our downwind would be here. We would take off like this, turn to a crosswind, and then to our downwind like this. And our traffic pattern would be all left turns like that. Okay, great. All right, so now let's move on to this next little diagram that you'll see. Now, so this is not a wind flag. This is called a wind triangle, and I have never seen one of these in real life. So let me know if you have seen one of these. And yes, Roy, it is 360 the runway direction, and then runway 2 was 270, so you were right. So this is different than a wind sock. This is a wind triangle. And the wind triangle, the pointy part, it gets a little confusing because the pointy part points into the direction that the wind is coming from. So whereas the wind sock was pointing in the direction that the wind was going, opposite the direction that the wind was coming from, the wind triangle, the pointy part points into the direction the wind is coming from. So the wind is coming from the southwest here. And the way these work is they're like aerodynamically shaped as this like 3D triangle, almost pyramid. And so that when the wind blows on this side of it, it turns almost like a weather vane in that direction, right? So the wind hits the sides here, and it turns the triangle so that the pointy part is pointing into the wind. So these are a little bit different, and then you're going to see this figure on the FAA Written. So you have to remember that the wind triangle points into the direction of the wind. So in this example, the wind is about, it's coming from like 220, okay, direction of 220, because it's coming from the southwest. And then you have to remember that wind socks, they point in the direction that the wind is going, or opposite that the direction the wind is coming from. Hopefully that makes sense. But okay, so Now with this scenario, what runway is best in this scenario right here with the wind how it is? What runway is best to land on? And what would the traffic pattern be? Left or right? So which runway and what traffic pattern? Okay, so Roy says right 1-8. Sama said, hey Sama, says 1-8 right. See if we have any other answers pop up. Israel says 1-8. So yeah, you guys are right. It's 1-8. Now, if these runways were not closed, our answer would be different. But because these X's mean that you're not allowed to land on these runways or taxi, we don't have the option of runway 4 or runway 22. But obviously 22 would be the best option, right? If we came landing into here, that would be straight into the wind for a perfect, almost perfect headwind landing, right? But 22 is not available for us. So the next best option would be runway 8. So we come in to land here on runway 18 to the south. The wind will be a bit of a crosswind, but also a bit of a headwind here. So we'll have a headwind component here, and then we'll have a crosswind component here. So you'll want to, compute your crosswind prior to landing. Make sure it's within your limits. But runway 18 would be the best option in this scenario. So good job. Let's do another. I want you guys to assume. Let's see if I can do this. I'm going to get rid of these X's. Okay, so now runway 4 and runway 22 are now available to land on. They are not closed. They are available. Okay, and the wind. So let's get rid of this. All right, and then so the wind triangle is. Let's see here. Let's make the wind triangle like this. Alright, so with the wind triangle like this, runways 4 and 22 also open now. What would be the best runway to land on? And what would be the pattern direction? Oh yeah, Israel, so the pattern direction for runway 18, sorry, so the way you determine that is runway 18 is here, right? So you look for this little notch in the direction of runway 18, and you look for the L shape, right? So you look for the base and the final, so that's a right turn. So it's a right angled L shape from base to final. So you first determine, okay, I want to land on 18, and then you can determine based off the L shape. Alright, so yeah, so let's go back to this, the wind triangle that I drew. What is the best runway? We'll give it a little bit. Roy says left 22. Roy says, no, it's right 04. Sorry. Salma says, right 4. Yeah, Israel, does that make sense? Feel free to speak up. If it doesn't, I will try to explain it another way for you. Want to make sure you get it. There's no shame in asking questions. I'm not, I don't always explain things the best way, so sometimes I need to find another way. All right, so everyone's saying right 4. So, yep, that is correct. The wind triangle is pointing to the northeast, and the wind triangles point to the direction the wind is coming from. So the wind is coming, the wind is coming from the northeast. So if the wind is coming from the northeast and we want a headwind landing, we want to land on runway 4. Okay, so we look on this little diagram here. We look for runway 4. Runway 4 is right here, this notch right here. The L shape has a base and then right turn to final in the direction of 040. So it's a right pattern on 040. So good job, you guys. Okay, Israel, it does make sense. Okay, just if it doesn't, let me know. But I'm glad that does. All right, I got one more question for you guys on this one. Based off this diagram right here, is there a specific area that ATC or whoever designed this airport, is there a specific area they don't want traffic flying at? So that's a question you're going to see on the FAA written exam. Is there an area around here? So it could be, to this side, to this side, to this side of it, to this side, here. What side of the airport? Is there a side? Indu says southeast. Travis says east. So the way you answer this question, so if you see a question like this in FAA Written, you want to just draw out the full traffic patterns based off these L shapes, right? So this traffic pattern would be like this, right here. This traffic pattern would be like this. This traffic pattern would be like that. And then this traffic pattern would be like that. So with that in mind, you have basically two areas that it might be. You have the southeast here, or you have the west. But because the west, these could be wider traffic patterns. So if we drew wider traffic patterns, so you can kind of start to see the areas with where ATC wants to sort of avoid traffic areas. So the answer yes is the southeast. Sorry, my little drawings didn't do the best job of showing that, but that's kind of how you answer that question. Did I totally confuse you guys on that? let me know. But the answer, yes, is to the southeast, because you look at the traffic pattern direction and you see that, okay, they're trying to turn everything to the west or have it come to the west and be right down here. So this kind of leaves a void here in the southeast. Okay, cool. All right, so that was what I wanted to explain. I got a couple questions on Instagram this week about this sort of stuff. I will open now to whatever questions you guys have. So it could be on flight training advice, just general advice, on a ground school topic. Yeah, 422 is closed. Yeah, so if that is the case, it's definitely to the east or southeast. Yeah, that's right, Israel. Well, so either way, right? It's to the east and southeast. You can kind of, when you have a multiple choice question, you're going to look for the things that make sense, the option that most makes sense, and hopefully they don't give you both east and southeast as options, right? Because if 4 and 22 were closed, then the answer is anything east. If 4 and 22 are open, then it's the southeast. So, and I don't think they include 4 and 22 in the exam. I think that exam question is to the southeast. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's it. So any questions that you guys have? I'll give you a few moments to. I'm not gonna leave or anything, so take your time, think about it. But what do you guys got for me? No questions, guys? Any update on an IR ground school? No, not yet. It's definitely something I want to do. It's in the plans. I just keep having more ideas on how to make the private pilot options we have better. And I just want that to be like perfect before I move on to higher ratings. Private pilot is, it's the most common rating people get. It's the starting point for people who want to make it a career. It's the most common rating people use for flying as a hobby. So I just want to make part-time pilot the best there, and then move on from there. So few more things I want to do, but sorry, I know a lot of people keep asking me. But is it a smart idea to put my flight training on hold if I'm waiting on my medical cert? Travis, uh, if you're comfortable with sharing more information, go ahead and share it. But if you're not, maybe be vague. But how many flight hours do you have? And what's the status of your medical cert? Only if you're comfortable sharing. You don't have to share details. You can just say, um, You can just say like you sent in the paperwork to the FAA and now you're just waiting on them or something. Indu, you're asking when do we see LIFR? Okay, while Travis is maybe, I don't know if he's gonna reply or not, but I'll give him some time. But Indu, so LIFR, um, you won't see that option often. Depends on the airport you fly at, but stands for Low Instrument Flight Rules, low IFR. Um, and I think it's like 500 feet ceilings and or like visibility less than a mile, I think. So, IFR is 1,000 foot ceilings and below, and then low IFR is, or sorry, VFR is 1,000 foot ceilings or more, and then low IFR would be at 500 feet or more. So it's just based off the cloud ceiling and the visibility. So it's 500 feet ceiling and 1 statute mile of visibility. And I think mostly, it'll be reported at most airports, but until you get into IFR, I'm not sure that you'll really care about it. You just want to see VFR. If you don't see VFR, you ain't flying. So unless you get IFR rated, then it's different. Yes. Okay, so Travis, I haven't started flying at all because I've sent in the documents they asked for back in March, and I call every 2 weeks, and they say it's still in review. Yeah, so I'm sorry you're having to go through that, Travis. The FAA just takes a long time, and I would recommend waiting. I know you're probably antsy to get started, but if you're going through ground school, I would get that out because I highly recommend, I've talked about this before, but I highly recommend doing ground training first, getting that FAA written. So think of this as a prime opportunity to get that stuff done while you wait for that. So by the time that stuff's done, hopefully that's going to be, they'll be getting back to you now. Okay, let's see. Here. There was a question back here. Is there a way to improve on ATC communication and make it easier? Thoughts on that? So, yeah, so I have some thoughts on it. The answer isn't like a smoking gun. It's not like some magic trick, but it's practice. It's practice, and then it's confidence. So the best way I found to be confident and to not mess up my communications is to chair fly my exact flight the night before. So I don't know what you guys believe, but I am a huge believer in the power of visualization. You look at any like top performer, top athlete, top coach, like anybody that's performing a task, what you are doing as a pilot, you're performing a task. they use visualization techniques. And basically the idea behind that is, if you've seen it, if you've done it in your mind before, when it comes time to doing it, it'll feel you'll recognize it. It'll feel recognizable. You'll feel like you've done it before, and it'll be easier. So people have confidence when they've done something a lot. So if you've done something a lot in your mind, and then you go and do it, it's going to be easier. So what I would do, and what I did when I was flight training, is before my flight, I would say, okay, I'm going to fly. I know we're going to fly, like let's say, okay, we're going to make a downwind departure. We're going to fly to the east, and then we're going to go through this airspace. So I'm going to need to talk to, I'm going to need to talk to ground control, and then I'm going to need to talk to the tower for takeoff, and then I'm going to need to ask for transition, and then I'm going to need to call up the class Delta when we transition through that, stuff like that, right? I'm going to need to talk to flight following, and I would write it down. I would write down a script in my notebook, and then I would read through it, and then I would sit in a chair, and I would visualize taxiing, doing my taxi calls, thinking about what they're going to say back. Okay, and you can write what you expect them to say back, and then doing the takeoff and just visualizing this and saying it out loud. You're gonna look crazy for sure. So maybe do it alone, not in like a cafe or something, but do that 2-3 times, and I swear to you it's gonna work. I became a believer of visualization when I was in high school, and my high school football coach, he got us to visualization, and he said before the first game I ever played varsity, it was against our rival, and I played defensive back. I don't know if you guys know football, but defense, they guard receivers, and so the night before I visualized getting an interception. Sure enough, the very first play, I had an interception. So since that day, I've been a huge believer in visualization. I've read a lot of books about it, and I think it's very, very powerful. The other thing you can do is the liveatc.net. If you just listen to a lot of ATC communications, it'll become more familiar to you, and then you can start responding, practicing response, see how close your responses are to the pilots on there. All right, let's see here. Hopefully that was effective. MVFR, do student pilots able to fly? So MVFR is marginal flight, visual flight rules. So no, you as a student pilot, you need VFR. So again, just look for VFR as a student pilot. Really, just don't really worry about anything else. Marginal flight rules is between. I'm getting mixed up. Let me look this up in my course real quick. See, even I get stumped sometimes. So marginal flight rules. Ceiling between 1,000 and 3,000 feet and 3 to 5 mile visibility. Okay, so yeah, so you are that's more than VFR, but it's marginal. It's getting close to VFR. So that's just a tool to tell you, hey, conditions are getting close to being below VFR. So I'm pretty sure student pilots can fly in that. Let me just make sure. I don't want to give you wrong information. Got a question that stumped me. So student pilot is not authorized to fly an MVFR. Okay, so I had that wrong. So it sounds like I need to review my I need to review my VFR and MVFR. Sorry about that. So yeah, so the moral, let me actually say what it is after I looked it up. Sorry about that. So you go VFR, right? And this is the order of least restrictive to most restrictive. VFR, MVFR, IFR, and LIFR. Okay? And so, yeah, so, and then going back to what I said, you only want to worry about VFR as a student pilot. So if you don't see VFR, if you see MVFR, LIFR, IFR, you can't fly it. Okay. Sama says, how do you identify class G with E comparing to the elevation of the airport in AGL and MSL? I'm not sure 100% what you're asking, Sama. How do you identify class G with E comparing to the elevation of the airport in AGL? So class G is everything it's underneath class E. Okay, so it's wherever class E is not, and that's always underneath. So class E can start at 1200, it can start at 700, or it can start at the surface. Obviously, when it starts at the surface, there's no class G there. When it starts at 700 feet AGL, class G is from the surface to 700 feet AGL. And then when it's in the area where it's 1200 feet, where class E starts at 1200 feet, class G is from the surface to 1200 feet AGL. So in MSL, you'll look at the elevation of the airport. Let's say the elevation of the airport is 500 feet. Okay, and if class E in that area is 1200 feet, then that means class G is from 500 feet MSL to 1200 feet above that, which would be 1700 feet MSL. Or 1200, yeah, did I say 1200 feet above that? Okay. Does a CFI have to endorse you to take the written test? How do they know if you studied online rather than taking ground school? So yes, a CFI, so either a certified flight instructor or certified ground instructor, those are two different things, but they're both certified by the FAA. One of those has to endorse you to take the written test. And they don't know whether you, I mean, they could ask you, but it depends on the instructor. The instructor might, depending on the instructor, they might require you to either take some instructions from them before you get your endorsement, which will be really expensive because you pay them by the hour, or they might say, okay, just show me some practice test results, or they might sit and actually quiz you on the information. The only thing the instructor cares about is they don't want to endorse somebody that's going to go on and fail the exam, because that looks bad on their record. So they want to make sure that they think you're going to pass the exam. And the way they do that is by practice test scores and by quizzing you on the information. So for an online ground school like ours, what we do is we have you go through all the lessons, take quizzes, which has FAA written type questions, all that, learn all the material, and then we have you take 3 practice tests. And then if you get an 80% or above on those, then I'm going to endorse you. And I'm going to endorse you online. You can print off your endorsement and go take the FAA written test. And so it doesn't matter whether it's online, whether you self-study. Self-study works too. You just have to find an instructor. That's why a lot of people go to online ground schools. They have that instructor that will endorse you. Everything's there. All the lessons are there. They're structured. They build upon one another. And then they have the practice test. It's all there. It makes things a lot easy. And then you print off your endorsement and bam, you're done. So it takes away from, you don't have to find an instructor or anything. But if you were to self-study, you just have to prove to an instructor and convince them, basically, to endorse you. Yes, Indu, that's the other thing. MePad, you can write out what you're going to say. I used to do that as well. Yes, liveatc.net, that's what I was talking about. Yeah, Indu, I'm going to go back and review the VFR and MVFR stuff, because that really stumped me, and I'm going to make sure in our course that it makes sense, because you stumped me on that one. It's been a while that I've even thought about MVFR. I guess flying in San Diego has its perks. Let's see. All right, I got a chance for one more question. Indu, yeah, they want 90 and above. I mean, I'm happy to endorse you. And what I do so most students when they go through our lessons and they take the practice test, most students get about between 85 and 95 or 100% on their practice test. There's some that get below 80, and you need 70 to pass. But they usually say that it's good to factor in 10% for the real thing, because the FAA might come up with new questions that no one knows about. So that's why I want people to have an 80. But if you were to not in our online ground school not get an 80 on our practice test, what I do is I go through all your practice tests and I find the questions that you got wrong, and I look for like what you were getting wrong, and I send you more practice tests. We talk about it over email. I tell you to review some lessons, ask some questions, and then we slowly work that up, and I give you more practice tests. And so far it's worked every time, because I still have yet to have a student not pass their written exam. So Indu, I will be happy to endorse you when you get through the course. All right, any more questions, guys? All right, so for next week, please come to me, like find something that you're struggling with and post it in the group. I feel like these lives, I feel like everyone's loving these lives, but one thing is that people aren't now posting questions in the group, which is also valuable. So please post the questions in the group, and I will pick a question to go in detail for the next live. So that's your guys' homework. I want every one of you guys to find a question, to hunt for a question on ground school and post it in the group, okay? Can you guys do that for me? Say yes in the comments that you can do that for me. I want to see yes. I want comments in the Facebook group. That's my number one goal, an active Facebook group. Indu, you're welcome. John, no problem. Sama, if the airport elevation is 700, then you just add Class G starts at 700 and it goes to wherever Class E ends. All right, Sama says yes. Roy says yes. Indu says yes. Travis says yes. All right, thank you guys. Find a question, because when you ask good questions, that is going to better your understanding of the topics, okay? The quality of life is the quality of the questions you ask. So thank you guys for joining, and I'll see you guys next week. But ask those questions, and then next week I will come with answers. All right, thanks, guys.